Sometimes you'd be hard pressed to tell that Donald actually won this election because he continues to be so aggrieved. Now, granted, he won by the smallest margin in a quarter of a century, but still, a win is a win. But we also see it in how he feels compelled to humiliate those closest to him. I mean, he's basically doing it to the entirety of the Republican Party. You know, Republicans in Congress are being forced to contend with either standing up and refusing to confirm Donald's nominations to cabinet positions, who are among the worst people on the planet, or, you know, bend the knee and kiss his ring. I'm pretty sure we know how most Republicans are going to behave. But there's also the way he's treating those in his inner circle. Particularly, he seems to have it in for Elon Musk, his alleged co-president. This is what Donald had to say at a meeting with congressional Republicans last week.
You know, he likes this place. I can't get him out of here. He just likes this place. Asking him, what do you do best? And we were not able to figure it out.
And then I guess just to push the knife in a little further, Donald had Musk sit next to Speaker of the House Mike Johnson's wife. We also saw Donald admonish Musk to put his phone away when they were at some kind of MMA event together. Then, of course, a few days ago, his egregious pick to be Director of Health and Human Services, Bob Kennedy, who has told us that he thinks the way Donald eats is poison, was forced to sit down and have a Happy Meal with him. So this Donald's relationship with humiliation has a very long history. And it all started when he was about 5 years old. Some of you have heard this story before, so I'll tell a short version of it. Donald was tormenting his little brother Robert, who was screaming hysterically. Nobody could get Donald to stop doing it. They were waiting for my grandmother to finish making dinner. Donald was ignoring her. And finally, my dad picked up a bowl of mashed potatoes that my grandmother had put on the table, and she dumped it on Donald's head just to get him to stop being horrible. And what happened next, I think, is what triggered Donald's troubling relationship with humiliation. Everybody, all four of his siblings and my grandmother, laughed at him. And by then he had not developed any mechanisms with which to handle that. You know, most of us learn to laugh at ourselves, have a sense of humor about things. Donald did not experience it that way at all. It was honestly, you know, just feeling like he was being laughed at and that he had no control over it. And it was in that moment he understood that humiliation was and could be a weapon. And he sort of made a decision right then and there that he was never going to allow himself to feel that horrible feeling again. And from then on, preemptively, he would be the one to wield the weapon of humiliation, and he would never, ever allow himself to be at the sharp end of it, right? So as extreme as this may seem, Donald never forgave my father, even though Donald, again, was like 5 or 6, and my dad was, I don't know, 13 or 14. Now, again, some of this is simply because that original humiliation was so deep and so powerful. But another part of it was that Donald realized that he didn't want to be like my father because my father was horribly abused by their father. Beyond that, though, my dad, Freddie, had something that Donald wanted, and that was to be the first in line to take over my grandfather's empire. Now, until my dad was an adult, he was going to be that person. He was the namesake. He was going to take over the Trump management, my grandfather's empire. But as soon as Donald realized that my grandfather had a very deep and kind of inexplicable disdain for my dad, Donald had an idea of what he needed to do to replace his older brother. So Donald took advantage of this situation, and whenever possible, he became my grandfather's right-hand man in tormenting Freddie. Now, my dad worked for Trump management with every expectation of being my dad's next in line, but it was just an untenable situation because my grandfather treated him so badly. So at the age of 25, he quit and he became a pilot for TWA in 1964, which you may or may not know was a really big deal back in 1964. I mean, to be a pilot at the dawn of the jet age was like being a rock star. The only person on the planet who didn't understand this was my grandfather, and Donald also pretended not to understand it. So while my grandfather was calling my dad a glorified bus driver, Donald was telling Freddie that he was an embarrassment to the family and particularly to my grandfather. This created a situation in which my dad just could not function. And, you know, he started having a lot of trouble with alcohol, and he kind of crawled back to Trump management and was never given a position of responsibility again. And as we know, Donald leapfrogged him and became my grandfather's pick to be the one to take over the empire. What's tragic, though, is that even as my dad worsened, even as he became sicker, and it was clear that he would never be respected by my grandfather, he would never, ever have a place in the family business again, they still needed to pile humiliation after humiliation upon him. For example, on those rare occasions Dad joined us for Thanksgiving or Christmas, he was seated at the weekend of the table with me and my grandmother, and my grandfather and Donald and other uncle and my Aunt Marianne, who were the only important people in the family, were at the powerful end of the table. Towards the end of his life, my grandfather gave my dad, who was recovering from open heart surgery, a job at Trump management as a maintenance worker. And he and Donald set up in a room in my grandparents' house, like newspaper clipping central, where every single article that mentioned Donald, that was about Donald, was spread all over the place. And this was used as an opportunity either to ignore my dad or to gloat about it in front of him. So Donald knows that humiliation works. And when he's in a position, though, to be humiliated, it does not end well for the person doing the humiliation. This happened back in, I think it was 2011. This is what Barack Obama had to say to Donald at the White House Correspondents' Dinner while Donald was in attendance.
Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience.
This was the beginning of Donald wanting to replace Barack Obama and then undo all of Obama's accomplishments. And And again, it was driven largely by comments that any other well-adjusted person just would have laughed off. The next person who was in a position to put Donald in his place was Kamala Harris, who wounded Donald grievously at the debate when she mocked him for his rallies. Check this out.
And I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. People start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
None of this will ever be forgiven or forgotten, ever. And unfortunately, it is not just the personal vendettas against those whom he considers the worst offenders. I mean, although those are serious, this is going to play out nationally and on in our politics and on the global stage, because Donald is so terrified of being humiliated. He has to be in control of every relationship, which means that no relationship can be equal. We've already seen in the past how he tries to humiliate our NATO allies. He tries to strong arm people, and he almost always gets his way. So this is not going to end well, because he is constitutionally incapable of changing. And with this new power that he has, which you could say in some ways is considerably greater than the power he had during his first administration, because there are no guardrails anymore, he will abuse that power in ways we have not yet seen. One, because he can, and two, because he has many, many, many more grievances. And remember, he has also not forgotten the humiliation of losing in 2020, which kind of puts all of us in his crosshairs. So probably would have been a better idea not to put him in a position to get back at us. But here we are. Hey everybody, in case you weren't aware, I am spectacularly bad at self-promotion. So here it goes. Please subscribe to our channel and like and share our videos. Your support means so much to all of us. Thank you.